This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore.
Donnie Lane, hey, Jesse, Brittany, and Sweepy, and spelled it correctly. That is fantastic. Do you believe Ginni Thomas will face any consequences for her actions concerning the 2020 election? Consequences legally, probably not. I think that it will be tough to pin her down unless more is revealed. But it is interesting. I was going to talk about this today, and then I had already scheduled the live stream, so I don't want to back out on it. And I didn't want to just inundate everybody with a bunch of content. But I want to read. We'll take your question down for a second, Donnie. I want to read a little bit about her statement in the Washington Post this morning, because yesterday Ginni Thomas testified before the January 6th committee. And part of her statement was this: I guarantee that my husband has never spoken with me about pending cases at the court. It's an ironclad rule in our home, Thomas added. Let me also add, it's laughable for anyone who knows my husband to think I could influence his jurisprudence. The man is independent and stubborn with strong character traits of independence and integrity. Then she went on to say this, addressing her text messages to Meadows in the statement, because remember, she was texting Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff. Thomas claimed that her husband was completely unaware of her communications with the White House chief of staff until this committee leaked them to the press while he was in a hospital bed fighting an infection. So, first of all, this first statement of hers right here, that I can guarantee that my husband has never spoken with me about pending case at the court. That doesn't mean she didn't speak to him about her activities related to trying to overturn the election. That's carefully worded lawyer language that she's using. So do I believe that she did something absolutely anti-democratic? Do I believe that she is a pernicious force in our country? Absolutely. But to answer the question, Donnie, I don't think that she will be held legally accountable. That's just my take. Do I believe she should be? Yeah, but I don't believe she will. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Deborah Millette Sanchez. Hi, Jesse. Is it your concern that if Republicans rule in 2024, that this country will become a full-fledged fascist government with dictatorship? That is what they're gunning for. If you listen to what they say, the things that they subscribe to, the things they're advocating for, then yes, that is what they want, a dictatorship that is run under a fascist philosophy. Absolutely. We can't deny that. Do I think that would happen immediately come 2024? No, it would be in steps. You know, the parable or the about the frog it being boiled. It's nonsense. A frog would jump out of a boiling pot, slowly or not. But it is kind of like that. It'll be in steps and gradual, where people get used to less and less freedom. They get used to more and more tyranny. But ultimately, yes, if the Republicans take control in 2024, they've said as much that they're never giving power back again. And that should scare everyone, because democratic norms as they've been in the United States, I mean, I said recently that we really weren't a functioning democracy until the 1920s because women couldn't vote. And some argued, and I tend to agree, that really wasn't until the 1960s, until the Civil Rights Act. I mean, we are a burgeoning, fledgling democracy, and if Republicans have anything to do with it, it's not gonna continue. So I hope that answers your question, Deborah. Victoria Anderson. Hi, Brittany. Hey, Brittany. Jesse and Sweepy. What was the point of Trump, Republican leadership, and the right-wing media of convincing their base that vaccinations and masks were unnecessary or dangerous? Why? I was going to say if you're asking me, but clearly you're asking me. I believe that it is all part and parcel in the culture war. That there is a strain that runs through conservatism, libertarian conservatism, that you're not going to tell me what to do. You're not my boss. There's this distrust of the government. But you'll notice that the same types who didn't trust the government to tell them what to do relative to their safety, like Ron DeSantis, are now ordering mass sections of Florida evacuated for your own good. It's for your safety, and it is for their safety. But advice coming from Ron DeSantis is good advice that you should heed. But if it comes from Joe Biden, if it comes from Anthony Fauci, an expert, a scientist, a man of medicine, a man who's dedicated his life to the prospect of healing humanity of disease, then oh no, that's suspect. It's all part of the culture war bullshit. I think it's as simple as that. There's probably some nuance that I'm losing there somewhere. But for the most part, I think that's what is encompassed by their games that they play. Good question. These are the things that we should all be thinking and talking about. Jeff Waldorf, $5. Thank you, sir. Right-wingers melting down over a flute is so on brand for the GOP. It really is. Let me give a plug to the lovely and talented Jeffrey Waldorf with Waldorf Nation. Great channel, great commentator. I would say friend of the show, but we've never had him on. We need to remedy that. DM me on Twitter, Jeff. It is on brand. It's my video coming out at 3:15. In fact, I'm going to have to get off before that so I could do some YouTube stuff. But Republicans and conservatives jumping from culture war nonsense item to culture war nonsense item to culture war nonsense item isn't something that should be lost on the American people. We should talk about it. We should recognize it, but we shouldn't be swept up into it as though it's legitimate. Because whether it be Colin Kaepernick kneeling for silently and peacefully kneeling for the national anthem, which is practically an anthem to slavery, to the proposition that slavery is the order of the world, if you read subsequent verses of it, or The Little Mermaid. It is just nonsense after nonsense to distract the people from the important things. It's been talked about in history that certain monarchies throughout history tried to keep their people unfed, keep them unread, so they could only focus on survival. And because if they were well-fed and well-read, then they would be able to understand the things around them that, oh, well, shit, things are bad. We could make them better. And the Republicans don't want their base to be smart, educated, informed. The Republicans want their base to be absolutely destitute where it relates to knowledge and understanding of the class system that exists in America. Because if they keep them distracted with whether Lizzo played a crystal flute of a man who owned over 100 human beings as property, if they're worried about that, they're not worried about these insane policies that Republicans want to foist upon the country through draconian abortion policy, through draconian tax cuts for the rich. It's gross. Watch more of Jeff Waldorf for some of that. Sandy G61. Why do we get inundated with clips of stupid Republicans in Congress, but hardly ever get clips, Democrat calling them out? Do the Democrats just not do that enough? Well, the reason, I don't know. That's a tough question to answer. Oftentimes, the clips that go viral are the ones that get talked about because people like me, and I'm not going to speak for people like Jeff Waldorf, or people like Farron or David Pakman. But when I talk about those items, it's really to point out and to break down in terms that are simple to understand exactly what the hypocrisy of the talking point is. These Republicans, they get up in front and they create their sound bites like in committee, let's say, because they know there is the Fox News outlet that's going to carry that right away. And that's their entire intent, is to create that viral moment that's going to be shared on Twitter and everywhere else. So in my view, it's going to be shared anyway. So why not talk about it, but put it in the perspective that it needs, which is reality, and not just the lies and the nonsense. I mean, when you witness what took place with Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott working as bedfellows to kidnap and ship off these refugees to Martha's Vineyard. If you watched what took place on Facebook and Twitter and elsewhere, they made light of it. They rejoiced that it happened, and then they just outright lied when it didn't go the way they wanted. They just lied about it and acted like the people of Martha's Vineyard were just beside themselves. We can't have this. When the reality is the people of Martha's Vineyard stood up and did the right thing and took care of those people. So, yeah. There's a lot of moving parts with this question. I don't know exactly how to answer. I hope I did a fair enough job, Sandy. Jason Fasho. Jesse, do you think Republicans have any idea of all the damage they've done to the credibility of all of our institutions in the government? Yeah, I do. And I think that's part of their MO, their modus operandi. I think that they mean for that to happen. I think they want to discredit. Listen, growing up a right-wing, radical, evangelical Christian nationalist who was suspect of the government, who distrusted the government. I grew up with Ruby Ridge happening. I grew up with the Branch Davidians in Waco happening, and it was all the government, the shadowy government, and what they're doing. This is something that's been promulgated and promoted by Republicans for decades and decades and decades. Ronald Reagan famously said that the most scary words to hear are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." I'm paraphrasing, but that was the sentiment. And if you can make the government be suspect, that means funding that government is also suspect, which also means that taxes are suspect. So then they create this culture war narrative around, oh, they're going to raise your taxes, even though the only people's taxes who ever really get raised are the middle class. The rich never have their taxes raised. They're fine. And even if they were raised, they'd be fine because they're uber rich. So yes, to answer your question plainly, I do believe the Republicans have an idea of all the damage they've done to the credibility of all the institutions in our government. Yes.